Hey Gearheads, it's Greg Stanley and welcome to Auto Sausage, where we grind together automotive awesomeness. Today we welcome a special guest, John Kraman, who's one of the TV commentators from Mecum Auctions. So be sure to stay tuned for his interview coming up here shortly. You can hear his full interview, including his career journey, on my other podcast, Learn from Others, which can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever you find awesome podcasts. Our next Auto Sausage guessing game is actually open now. So this one is for Mecum's Portland, Oregon auction, and the guessing window will close on 6/19 at 11:59 p.m. The auction dates are 6/20 and 6/21. And to learn more about the auction and to see all the lots involved, be sure to go to mecum.com. So what will you win this round? You'll win great car care prizes, including Buckhead Mechanics gloves, a uranium LED flashlight that's super bright, and a stainless steel tumbler that is kind of a camouflage kind of design on it. And all of these total almost $80 worth of goods. So be sure to sign up and play. To play the guessing game, go to autosausage.com, where you'll just have to guess the price on 5 cool classic cars, or just 5 cool cars coming up for auction. I'm going to review the 5 cars for this particular one right now, but ironically, 4 of them are actually SUVs, or trucks, because trucks are taking off like crazy right now. So I thought it would be fun to do one of all trucks, but I found I needed to throw in one kind of high-dollar car there at the end, which is kind of fun. Mecum did not post any estimates, so as always, I will use the Hagerty Price Guide, grade quality number 1, and number 3 to kind of give you an idea of what they'll sell for, and I'll provide you my own estimate range based on my expertise and experience. So the first one we're going to look at is a 1967 Toyota FJ40 Land Cruiser. If you read the fine print, this is actually one that was imported from Japan, because the U.S. ones were not actually made in 1968. So this is actually really cool. I would say the condition on this car is a 2+. It's not mint, but it's really, really nice. From the pictures, it has great colors. It's kind of cool green, looks ready to go. The key mechanics have been refreshed and it's ready to hit the road. These are actually declining slightly, so they've been on a tear for a long time. Super expensive. They flattened out and they're going slightly down right now. So if you look at the price for one in number 1 condition, it's about $81,000. And number 3, it's about $29,000 with a slightly down 3-year sales trend. Now, my estimate range, I'm going to say this is going to fall between $38,000 and $52,000. I think that's a little bit more realistic. I think it'll be a little bit on the high side of that, actually. Really cool truck. Only 300 miles since restoration. It was upgraded with a 4-speed transmission. So some cool stuff going on with that one. That's on Friday. Also on Friday is a 2004 Dodge Ram SRT 10 pickup. Now, if you're not familiar with this particular pickup truck, it's a really cool truck. It's got the Viper V10 engine. There's not a lot of information on these. Hagerty does have a valuation on these trucks. In number 1 condition, it's worth $45,500. And in number 3, it's $25,000. I think this is going to be on the high end of the estimate range. I think it actually might even go higher. Reason being is this truck only has 6,900 miles. It's got a 6-speed manual transmission. It's the V10. It's a pretty silver color. And the 3-year sales trend, it's been up strong most recently the last 12 months. So I'm going to say this is going to sell between $42,000 and $50,000. I think it actually might kind of make a record for this one. So we'll see. The third one we'll do is a 1980 International Scout Lot F159. So it's on Friday. It's got a lot of aftermarket items on it, a lot of mods on it. I think that will hurt the sale somewhat. Hagerty says the number 1 shape is $44,000. Number 3 is $21,000. I'm going to say this is going to sell between $20,000 and $26,000. The mods are going to hurt this one. It's kind of a weird color. It is a diesel, which is pretty cool, and diesels are pretty hot right now. So the 3-year sales trend on this one is up really hard. So these things have really increased in value recently. That's because the Broncos are so expensive now. People are looking for other cool SUVs from that same type of period. The International Scout fits that bill. Now, the fourth one we're going to look at of the 5 was a 1973 Ford Bronco Lot F200. But that's no longer on their website. So I'm thinking what might have happened is this one fell out of the auction for one reason or another. We'll review it now anyways, just in case it pops back in there. This particular SUV, Hagerty condition number 1, is $88,000. Can you believe that? Price for number 3 is $36,000. The 3-year trend is up really strong, but it has leveled off recently, so I think they've kind of capped out. I'm going to say this is going to sell a little lower because I would say closer to the number 3 condition. I'd say condition 2.5. I think this will sell between $35,500 and $48,500. My final estimate will be posted the day before the auction starts. So hopefully that one will make it back into the auction, and we won't have to go with 4 this week. We'll have to go with 5. So the last one, the 5th one, is actually a car. It's a 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429, one of my favorites, lot S120. These things are awesome. They're incredible. They have this huge 429 engine, special made. Had the shoehorned in there by Carcraft. They had to redo the shock towers. Just a great, great car. The Hagerty valuation in number 1 condition is $391,000. The Hagerty price for number 3 condition is $200,000. So the 3-year sales trend on these is trending slightly down. It's got a great color combination. It's red. It's got some good documentation. I think it will sell somewhere in between the two of those spots. I think it's probably a number 2, maybe getting closer to a number 1 condition. But I think as most muscle cars are slightly down right now, I think it will sell between $250 and $320. I don't think it will go for the full $391. So we'll see how that one does as well. Good luck playing the Auto Sausage guessing game. And now I'd like to introduce Mecum's very own John Kraman. John, how you doing today?
I am doing great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, John. You can hear John's career journey from what he wanted to be when he was a little kid to what he's doing today on our other podcast called Learn from Others. So be sure to check it out. So, John, I appreciate your time today, and this is all about cars. So let's dig in deep here. What moment did you realize you loved cars?
There has never been a moment in my life where I haven't been immersed with cars. It looks like it started around 2 years old, and it still continues to churn all these years later. I love cars.
Now, do you have any particular brand of car or era of cars that you really love?
Yeah, there's really sort of a two-part answer to that. My interest level really begins in the mid-1950s and goes right up until the present day. That's primarily because those are the cars that I remember growing up, I think. Not to say that cars earlier than that that I don't have an interest in, because I do. And for some reason, the Pontiacs, gone now since 2010, from a very early age, were the cars that captured my imagination. The full-size cars in the late 50s, early 60s, and then, of course, the GTO in 1964, most people say it's the first muscle car. I like to have fun discussing that with people that have other opinions. There's no right or wrong answer. But that definitely caught my imagination, and I own a 64 GTO, and it's going to be part of my permanent collection. So
now, speaking of which, what are some of the other cool cars you have in your collection?
Well, as a youngster wild about cars, there were 4 cars that I realized that I wanted to have. Even this is probably 5-6 years old. GTO, yeah, I got that box checked. Corvette, yeah, I've got 2 of those. Mustang, yep, got 1 of those. And a Cadillac. A Cadillac to me was the sort of like the pinnacle of prestige and styling and image. And I didn't get my first Cadillac, and all these were bought new, by the way. Didn't get that one until 2015, 3 years ago. But finally checked off the Cadillac box. So now my garage is full of all my dream cars, and just lavish a bunch of care to all of them, and they're not going anywhere soon. None of them are.
Now, you're one of the rare folks that turned your passion to cars into a career. So if you would, tell us, what do you do for Mecum Auctions?
Yeah, I started with Mecum back in 2006. Now, keep in mind, Mecum Auctions has been in business since 1988, but Dana Mecum, the founder and president, he's a visionary. He decided back in the mid-2000s he wanted to take this company and push it to a much higher level than what it was, and I was very lucky. The timing was right for me. A mutual friend put us together, and it was a match made in heaven. I started as the director of consignments, helping Mecum Auctions wrangle all the consignments necessary to hold our auctions, which during calendar year 2019, we're looking to consign about 20,000 vehicles. It's a huge effort now. As we've grown over the years, we'll do about $400 million in sales of collector cars this year as well. We are the world's largest by far. Like I said, I was brought in during sort of the next wave, the second wave of push, and we went on television in 2008. I was chosen to be the commentator analyst, and boy, we've just got a hit show on TV, and it's really helped us over the past 12 years to not only position ourselves, Mecum Auction, as a great auction company to do business with, but also for those of us on the show, the announcers and myself, to promote and share our love and our knowledge and our enthusiasm for collector cars, particularly as we're talking about, generationally, hoping that future generations will continue to embrace the level of interest and satisfaction that we get, you and I get out of these cars.
Obviously, you know a lot about cars. You probably know more than most folks, but you can't know everything. So what is your research like prior to a big auction weekend?
That's a really good question, because when it comes to what I would say traditional Mecum inventory, which would be those mid-50s to early 70s cars that are so popular in the collector car world, and of course you can put trucks and motorcycles in there too, pretty well versed there. But yeah, we get curveballs every once in a while. Our Monterey, California auction's a bit of a boutique auction for Mecum, where we get heavily involved in a lot of European classics, vintage Porsches, vintage Ferraris, other exotics, and also some contemporary supercars. And that's where I kind of have to bone up a little bit and learn about some of the nuances of some of the foreign brands that are simply not here in the U.S. or on the Mecum auction block in the same type of quantity. And I'm not shy about picking up a reference book or going online and filling in some few blanks so that I can make sure that when we hit the airwaves with our show, that we can provide good, accurate, relevant information on every vehicle that crosses that block.
Yeah, you really seem to pull out some very unique and rare cars. I know I was at the Mecum Indy a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lot of stuff that I was like, wow, okay, that's a Mopar, but it's not one I've ever seen before. You had the rapid
Right.
transit cars, and you had two cars that I actually found 2 years ago while I was on my travels throughout the U.S. in either a restoration shop or a barn, the 63 Cheetah. I actually heard about that through a friend, and the Paul Newman Porsche. Found that near my dad's house in Holly Springs, Georgia, in a barn, which was kind of cool. So those are not typical fares, so it's great to know that you're able to brush up on those oddballs every once in a while to make sure you present it the right way to your audience.
Those are a couple of wonderful examples of exactly that. You know, so much of what we do at Mecum Auctions and on the television program are fairly traditional collector cars. You know, the Chevrolets and the Mopars and the Ford Motor Product Companies, some of the popular imports like VWs. We see that stuff in very great quantity and have been doing that for a long time. But, yeah, to kind of reach out to some of the more rare vehicles and the more exotic and more expensive vehicles, a little bit of a challenge on some of that stuff, because you don't want to say stuff that's not accurate. You don't want to just make stuff up, because you're going to be exposed. It's not what you want to do. But at the same time, if you don't have information to share with the listeners, the viewers, you've got a problem there too. So a little bit of pressure there, but like I say, we're in year 12. It's unbelievable. 2008 is when we first started television. Each year we get more hours on the network. We're running about 200 hours or so of live new content each year, but we're on the air about 1,000 hours a year because they re-air our auctions so frequently.
Yeah, you guys are filling up my DVR. Thanks. No, just kidding.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So what's the coolest car you've recently reviewed on the auction block? Does one pop out?
Well, I got to tell you, this is for the Mopar guys. We go back to our Indy auction. I'm curious if you remember this. We had a great collection of some of the world's best, most rare, valuable, great original condition Mopar products on the planet, performance-oriented cars from the late 60s, early 70s. One of the cars there didn't get a lot of initial attention as a 1969 Plymouth Barracuda Formula S, neat car, a little coupe, 340, 275 horse, column-shifted automatic transmission. But what made it unique was the flowered final top called a mod top.
I took a bunch of pictures of that.
Yeah, matching seat inserts. A couple hundred of them, I think, were built. Not usually particularly valuable. A car represents the flower power era of the late 1950s, a very short-lived design theme. But about as quickly as it came out, it was already out of fashion. And the pre-auction estimate of this car was $50,000 to $70,000. I thought that was a little on the high side. Probably thought I'd bring $30,000, $40,000. And it hammered the hammer price after one of the most epic bidding battles in Mecum history. It hammered for a shocking, almost unbelievable $400,000. And if you look at the Mecum website and find it, it's easy to find, you'll see a $440,000 sale price. Well, that includes the 10% buy fee. $440,000 for 1969 Plymouth Formula S with a 340 with the mod top. Two Mopar enthusiasts, high-end enthusiasts that came to this auction to buy that car, and they were not going to let the other guy go home with it without a heck of a battle.
Yeah, that must have been like fireworks going off there on the auction floor. That's amazing.
It was. It was magic. It was fun, and the buyer could not be more delighted that he's got the car. So it's a win-win for everyone, except for the guy maybe that didn't get it.
That's right. Wow. Well, what are some of the recent market trends you're seeing today?
Boy, you know, we talk about what the future might bring and where we're at now, and you have to say, very much like the sales of new vehicles, trucks and four-wheel drives and SUVs, vintage ones, just continue to just reset the bar, auction after auction. First-generation Broncos, the 66 through 77 Broncos, are on fire. Blazers are on fire. And then you combine with that the fact that the aftermarket's come on board with lots of aftermarket plug-and-play goodies, engine, transmission, suspension, brakes, appearance items. They've come through with that to be able to modernize these vintage vehicles, and the buyers, the automotive enthusiasts, is going crazy over that stuff. And that bodes well, because what it tells me is, and this is a slightly younger demographic, by the way, that are buying these as opposed to want to buy vehicles that have original powertrains, it's helping to put a lot of interest and energy in this market to a younger audience, and we're all for it.
Yes, I've been looking at these auction trends recently on SUVs, and that's why for this next auto auction that I'm doing, this guessing game, 4 of the 5 are actually SUVs, because I think it's fun to dig into it. I think the Toyota FJs have kind of capped out, but you've got the International that are on a hot streak going north, and the SUVs, the Ford Broncos, are still up there. So, yeah, it's really interesting to see the market trends change. So, speaking of the market trends, is there one that's gotten away, with a car that you wish you still had that just got away from you?
You have to ask that so I can relive that, huh? Back in 1978, I was a youngster. I'd been married for 3 years. I bought a 1-year-old 1977 Pontiac Trans Am. But not only any Pontiac Trans Am, I'm not even sure I knew that the movie Smokey and the Bandit was even out yet. But it was a black special edition, referred to today as the Bandit edition, the black with the gold trim. The optional TA 6.6 engine, 4-speed, T-tops. Car had 12,000 miles on it. I had it a year. I sold it a year after I had bought it and took a $1,000 loss on it after keeping it a year. And, of course, we know now that that's one of the hot it cars from the 1970s, and I regret selling that car to this day. I've kept my 64 GTO I bought back in July of 76. I still own that today, but I sure wish that black Bandit Edition Trans Am was sitting next to it in the garage.
That's an iconic car, not just a fantastic car. That's an iconic car. Well, I'll let you go. I could talk to you all day, but I'm going to ask you 2 more questions. Do you have a barn find story?
You know, the barn find phenomenon is fascinating to me, because here are cars that are coming out of long-term storage with an inch or 2 of dust and grime and, rodent dander. And some of these cars were pretty nice when they were put away, and some of these cars had a lot of deterioration when they were put away, but they almost never fail to bring crazy dollar amounts, despite the fact that these cars, to bring them up to some level of mechanical and cosmetic appearance, they're going to need a lot of work. We go back 3-4 years to a Mecum auction where we had a barn find 69 Dodge Charger Daytona, very rare car in its own right. It was a base engine, the 375 horse 440 automatic, so not the optional Hemi. But the car was I would say the car was in poor overall condition. And it got brought out of a barn. It was roped off. It said, do not touch, do not wash, keep all the dust and all the grime on the car intact. And it sold for $75,000, about double what I guessed it was going to bring. So I don't know if the owner decided to restore the car or if he's decided to keep it as an as-found barn find. But not a big part of the collector car world, but definitely an interesting niche. Not my cup of tea, but I understand that there are those people that have an appeal to those cars, and it's great.
Yeah, I've got it's not a special barn find really per se, but I've got the 1993 Indy Pace Car Camaro. There's a lot of those out there. They're only worth 16, 18 grand, and they low miles. But this particular one has a nice layer of dust, and it's never dealer prepped. It only has 9 miles on it.
Well, that's a true barn find. Okay, now we're talking a great car. Go ahead.
Now I want to take it as is. It's out in Altoona, Pennsylvania. I want to take it as is with the dust. Just roll it up on your auction block and see what happens. Thank you so much for your time today. Where are you off to next?
Next up is going to be our Portland, Oregon auction, one of our smaller auctions. But that's going to be June 21st and 22nd. It's a Friday, Saturday, 2-day auction. Plenty of great coverage on NBCSN, so be sure to check that out. And we have learned that the folks out there in Portland, Oregon, they do love their collector cars out there. And they like to have cars that they drive, so there's a lot of entry and mid-level collectible cars are going to be crossing that auction block. So if you can't make it out to Portland, tune in, NBCSN.
Awesome. Well, again, to hear John's full career journey from when he was a little kid to today, be sure to check out his interview on LFO, Learn from Others, which will be out on Monday. And John, thanks again for your time today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the interest.